Okay, so thanks to the great people at Critical PR, John and Charlotte, man, I went and checked out Apollo 13 Survival. Hmm. This is the new one from director Peter Middleton, right? The gist of the story is in April 1970, NASA faced the greatest crisis in its history. Three astronauts stranded halfway to the moon on a spacecraft that had suffered a catastrophic explosion. What unfolded over the next 4 days was a rescue mission like no other. A knife-edge life or death drama broadcast in real time to the watching world. Apollo 13 Survival is a visceral archive-led cinematic retelling of this iconic space story, brought to life with rare accesses to the complete recordings of the Apollo 13 mission, never before seen film from the NASA archive, alongside interviews with the crew, their families, and members of ground control. As the spacecraft hammer hemorrhage? Hammer I'm not even sure. Hemorrhage? Maybe it's hemorrhages, critical power and oxygen supplies. Our approach immerses the audience in the unfolding drama of the crisis from inside the spacecraft at mission control and within the family's homes. When what transpired was one of the great survival stories in human history, a triumph of ingenuity, teamwork, and human resilience as the world watched, waited, held its collective breath. So yeah, that's what this is about, right? I think we had that it was the Tom Hanks was Apollo 13, I think. I swear that was Apollo 13. Right. So we've heard about this story, right? But this is this real intense look at everything that went down. Look, we've got a director's statement from Peter Middleton. It reads, from our vantage point of more than half a century, it's hard to comprehend just how audacious the Apollo program was. President Kennedy's 1962 proclamation that America would land a man on the moon before the decade was out fired the starting pistol to a race that would capture the imagination of the world. Just 7 years later, the sight of astronauts walking on the moon was real-life poetry, the fulfillment of a millennia-spanning dream that human beings could leave their planet and explore another celestial body. A fifth of the world's population turned in to watch Armstrong's first steps on the moon in July 1969, the largest television audience in history. For Jim Lovell, the mission's backup commander, it was a day of conflicting emotions. Footage in the mission control room at NASA shows him transfixed by the live television feed. A mixture of pride at his friend's historic achievement tinged with envy that he'd been beaten to the moment. Spaceflight had been Jim's fascination since childbirth. He'd even written his college thesis on the theory of liquid propellant rockets. This was at a time when the prospect of leaving the Earth's atmosphere was primarily the domain of comic book artists and sci-fi writers. Watching Armstrong explore the lunar surface only reaffirmed his determination to follow in his footsteps. Jim was, after all, the most traveled person in human history, with more miles in space than all the Russian astronauts combined, and one of only 3 people in history to have already orbited the moon on the Apollo 8 Pathfinder mission. That flight at Christmas time, 1968, had been a rare moment of global unity in a turbulent year, coming at a time of embittered political and social division, urban unrest, and political assassinations, the ongoing struggle for civil rights, and an escalating war in Vietnam. Apollo 8 had been a chance for the world to pause and reflect on our common humanity, to contemplate what binds us together rather than fixate on what divides us. This message was encapsulated in the awe-inspiring Earthrise photograph, a breathtaking portrait of our home planet. The Earth is shown rising above the barren surface of the moon, a brilliant flush of color, the lone source of life set against the infinite black void of the cosmos. The launch date for Apollo 13, NASA's third moon landing mission, following the successful landing of Apollo 11 and 12, was scheduled for the 11th of April 1970 at 1:13 Houston time. This would be Jim's last chance to fulfill his boyhood dream and crown a distinguished spaceflight career. By this stage in the Apollo program, another flawless lunar landing was almost considered a formality. Ahead of the launch, one news anchor quipped that the public mood was one of certainty, that nothing can or will go wrong. On the night of Apollo 13, that sense of certainty was abruptly shattered. The explosion that ripped through the spacecraft's fuel cells confounded the mission controllers at Houston. As the full scale of the disaster became clear, disbelief turned to despair. No one had ever known a crisis like this. 3 astronauts were stranded 200,000 miles from the safety of Earth, trapped in a crippled spacecraft, hemorrhaging power and oxygen. What unfolded over the next 4 days was one of the most audacious rescue missions in humanity's history. In approaching the retelling of this incredible survival story, our ambition was to place the audience at the center of the unfolding drama. We resolved not to use any on-camera or talking head interviews, privileging archival recordings and testimony from sources recorded as close as possible to the mission. This was only made possible by the extraordinary contribution of our intrepid team of researchers, archivists, and space enthusiasts. Most significantly, the team behind the NASA supported Apollo in Real Time project, who had recently undertaken the painstaking work of untangling, retrimming, and remastering approximately 7,000 hours of audio recorded in mission control during the flight. To complement this audio archive, our team amassed and catalogued an incredible tranche of materials drawn from the hundreds of sources. Many never before seen or long overlooked treasures were unearthed from the depths of the NASA vaults, including the astounding 65mm film prints of the crew's mission preparations and the tapes of the official mission debrief recorded with the astronauts just days after their safe return to Earth. Another crucial piece of the puzzle was the material provided by the Lovell family. From early in the deployment of the project, we knew that the family's experience would be the emotional heart of the film, and breakthrough came when we received news that a box of 8mm home movies had been discovered. These glorious um, Kodachrome film prints offered us a window into Jim's home life. They showed the man behind the public image, a loving father and devoted husband to his high school sweetheart, Marilyn. Along with this footage, the family shared dozens of photo albums dating back to the 1940s, charting the early days of their relationship, Jim's career as a pilot for the US Navy, and his stellar rise through the ranks of the NASA Astronaut Corps. These color images of Jim and Marilyn and their family life contrasted starkly with the grainy black and white photos captured in their home during the mission. Raw, unfiltered, and deeply emotional. These images show the human face of the crisis. They document every twist and turn of the drama. Marilyn's anxious telephone calls to ground control, the family in silent communion at an impromptu prayer service, and a scene of jubilation after the spacecraft's nail-biting re-entry through the Earth's atmosphere. In threading together these materials, our team was on the lookout for moments that could further humanize the crisis. This was at the root of our decision to frame the story through the prism of Jim and Marilyn's relationship. Confident, easygoing, and thoughtful, Jim was more articulate and reflective about the experience of spaceflight than many of his NASA contemporaries. His recollection of orbiting the moon, the thrill of seeing the Earth appear on the horizon, shining like a Christmas tree bauble, hanging in our absolute black sky, as a particularly evocative image. Little wonder then that Jim's colleagues teased him for being the poet of the Apollo Astronaut Corps. You could put your thumb up and hide everything that you'd ever known, he said of that same profound experience. When you think about that, you have to realize how insignificant we are. Many commentators maintain that the astonishing imagery of our home planet remains one of the most important legacies of the Apollo program. These images showed us, quite literally, our place in the cosmos. One Earth, one humanity, vulnerable and inextricably connected. At the turn of the 1970s, the new perspective was helping to galvanize public engagement with the natural world, ushering in an era of renewed focus on understanding the planet's ecology and the urgency of environmental conservation. Just weeks after the return of Apollo 13, the first ever Earth Day was held across the US. The demonstrations saw more than 20 million Americans take to the streets, which remains the largest single-day protest in the country's history. News coverage drew direct reference to the ill-fated Apollo 13 mission. This Earth is also a spinning spaceship. Muse CBS correspondent Eric Severed. All of us are astronauts, and our oxygen and water are also diminishing. But unlike Apollo 13, we have no place to go. Oh my God. I mean, this does go on, so I'm going to leave it there. And you probably get the gist of what this was. You know, what I thought was really interesting, because it's this NASA footage, so we really get a close-up look of the launch, right? There's these like caterpillar treads turning. Like, I'd never seen it close before, right? You usually see images of the spaceship standing there, but not of the space and what's going on. So we're seeing all of this. You know, it was funny as in the news footage, we got all the pilots standing there and they'd be like, these young men. And you look at them and you're like, I mean, they're not. They're not young men. Really, come on. I mean, Jim was 42, right? Who else was there? There was Halls? Huss? Something Huss? Like Fred Hoss, who was 38. And then or he was he was 36, right? And John Swigert was 38. So yeah, not young men, but you know what I mean? They're doing their thing, right? Doing their thing. So we actually see footage of them doing the astronaut training. And like you've seen that thing, that spinny arm thing. I mean, they used that in I think it was Moonraker, right? The James Bond film. But some of the other stuff was kind of crazy. Like I've not seen any of that shit before. So it's a fascinating look. Also, in the footage, right, we've got Marilyn, his wife, you know, doing the interviews and talking, and the fake smile. Because then when the camera's kind of focusing on Jim, you just see her face, and man, like she doesn't look out overly happy, right? She doesn't look pleased that Jim's all about, I'm going to space, right? You can see that she's just like, mad, I would prefer him to be on solid ground. But I think one thing that it brings up, and I'd heard about it, I'd kind of forgotten, right? But the NASA pilots, right? They take them from, you know, a lot of times test pilots, right? So they are so used to putting their life on the line, right? Because when you're test piloting something, you are doing all sorts of flips and taking a plane to, you know, silly degrees, right? Oh, if you take it this high, oh, if you do these many spins, oh, if you do, you know what I mean? It's all things to see what would happen to a plane. And mad people die in that, right? They talk about all the, you know, potential astronauts who die in astronaut training. The amount of people that die in test pilot training is even higher. So, you know, we see all of this. And then it's just a look at the ground control, right? And you kind of scratch your head, right? That there was no contingency. They hadn't really gone, oh, what would happen if? There was none of that. So it is miraculous that these dudes were able to survive, you know, because not a whole lot of fault, right? It was insane. So this was, if you enjoy space, right? If you enjoy, you know, because there's been loads of documentaries about the Apollo missions and the other missions and NASA in general. If you like all of those, if you like stuff like All Mankind, right? The fictional stories of space and all of that, then I think Apollo 13 survival will definitely be something that you're down with, you know, because it is very well done. It's very well done. A lot of mood music, you know what I mean? A lot of mood music, but it's all right. It's okay. It was useful, right? It was useful. I think the thing that was just the biggest irritation though of this, right? The film starts and we have a lot of text on screen. Tiny, tiny ass white text, right? You've got this huge screen, this tiny text in the middle. I'm baffled. I'm baffled why. I don't know why we continue to do this shit. You know what I mean? It's like, make the text bigger, or just have someone narrate, because we're hearing, Jim, Marilyn, the kids' voices, right? We're hearing the voice of the daughter. Now, obviously, that's new footage. That's new sound. I'm assuming it's new, right? But have one of the kids do the reading of the text, right? Because we have the text on the black, but then there's also text that comes up on a lighter background. It's ridiculous. And at the end of the film, again, more motherfucking text. I have no clue what it said. I have absolutely no clue. It's frustrating. Or, and I also feel, at least if you were doing that, put that text on your website. You know what I mean? At least do that. Be like, our film starts and ends with, some text. Here it is for those that might not be able to see it. Do something. Do something. Other than that, though, very enjoyable and informative. Because as I said, we see so much. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy that after all of these years, this is the first time we're seeing this kind of shit. You know what I mean? So mad props to Peter and his team. There's no information on IMBD or in the press pack of who else helped, put this together. All the researchers, just everyone else. I don't know their names, so they don't get shout outs. But man, everyone that worked on this did a tremendous job. So if it sounds like something that you would be interested in, the 5th of September, people, that is when you can get Apollo 13 Survival in your life. And I'm assuming it's coming to Netflix. This is a Netflix documentary. And I don't think they're going to do a theater run, as it were. So Apollo 13 Survival, 5th of September, Netflix.